Okay, so I was scrolling on my Twitter timeline when I found out that Vinland Saga Season 2 was trending. So you know what I did? I got straight onto YouTube and I looked at the videos that were out, and I quickly realized that the trailer for Season 2 is out. And man, it just gave me such a satisfying feeling knowing that this brilliant anime is returning to our screens. Now I must admit, I am not a Vinland Saga original, because this anime came out in 2019 and I only watched the anime at the beginning of 2021. But what I can tell you is that I know a masterpiece when I see one, and Vinland Saga gave me those vibes. So with the news of Vinland Saga Season 2 coming out, I thought what's better than having a quick recap as to what happened in Season 1. Now what can I say? In true British fashion, I'll say that it was bloody fantastic. Vinland, just in terms of being an excellently written and animated prologue, might be second to none. Very early on, we are introduced to a man who we believe to be our main protagonist, and he goes by the name of Thors. And we effectively learn that he is this great Jomsviking that decides that he no longer wants to be a warrior. He fakes his death in order to live a life of peace and love because he has a child on the way. Now after a number of years, his secret is soon to be discovered, and his services are required for an upcoming war. It's here that I must mention that his whereabouts are found by these old Jomsvikings, and he is hunted down and he is threatened to return to the Jomsvikings, or else he will see his newly created village destroyed before his eyes. Now upon his return to the Jomsvikings, he was betrayed and ambushed by an individual that goes by the name of Askeladd, and unfortunately he is killed in front of his only son, Thorfinn. And I mean, this is really where the story begins. A sweet and innocent child, no older than the age of 6, sees his father killed right before his eyes. Now seeing how his father put his life on the line with the odds stacked up against him, Thorfinn, son of Thors, who we find out is the real protagonist of this story, looks to avenge his father by challenging Askeladd, his father's killer, to a duel. Now of course, he is far too young and out of his depth here, so in order to achieve this, Thorfinn joins Askeladd's crew and is rewarded with a duel for everything useful he does for Askeladd. The story effectively time skips after this, and we are reintroduced to Thorfinn as a teenager who clearly has been alongside Askeladd throughout the years, challenging him to duels time after time, but to no success. We do see that Thorfinn, however, has improved his skills dramatically, as his blade work and agility effectively make him one of the leading men in Askeladd's crew, with Thorfinn now straying away with the foundations his father Thors left him, of effectively just being a decent man and a respectable human being. At this point, Thorfinn has killed so many individuals that he's lost count. However, Thorfinn here is hell-bent on seeking revenge for his father, and his revenge stems so deep that he'll continue to kill if it means that he can challenge Askeladd to a duel at any time. And this is definitely a two-way relationship, because Askeladd sees how useful Thorfinn is to him, and he continues to keep him alive, just as part of his wider plan. And this becomes clearer as Askeladd's crew find themselves in the middle of a war between Denmark and England, and have the mission of protecting the prince named Canute. Now this prince is not like the type of prince you'd expect, but effectively is soft-spoken and useless. But at the same time that they're tasked with protecting this prince, we're introduced to another individual who goes by the name of Thorkel, and he is hunting Askeladd and crew down. And let me tell you what, Thorkel is no joke. He is pretty much regarded as the strongest man of their times outside of Thors, who I remind you is Thorfinn's father that passed away. And from the dialogue we get from Thorkel, he tells us that the only person that could defeat him was Thors. Anyway, I digress, because the story does progress significantly here, and Prince Canute is effectively forced into becoming a leader after his advisor Ragnarok dies. Now as you may have guessed, this death was not a coincidence, and was a planned elimination by who else but Askeladd again. And Askeladd understood that Ragnarok was a hindrance to Canute's growth, as he was treating him, well, as a baby, and being more of a soft father figure to him rather than helping him to become a true powerful prince. Now I must admit a lot happens at this point, because Thorkel does catch up with Askeladd's crew, and therefore they effectively decide to turn on Askeladd and switch sides in order to join Thorkel. And in order to do this, they try and take the prince, who was in Askeladd's custody, and give him to Thorkel almost as a peace gesture, hoping in doing this that Thorkel will spare them and they'd be able to join his side. However, Thorkel, being the savage that he is, does not spare them whatsoever, and he literally kills all of them except for Askeladd. Whilst this is all happening, the prince is still mourning Ragnarok, and in the midst of all of this battle, he's also speaking to the priest that they were travelling with, and ultimately just doing some self-reflection. And at some point, he effectively realises that he can't mope around anymore, and he needs to take control by being a true prince. But as I said, this is while Thorkel is literally killing everyone. And Thorkel, however, does drop hints to Thorfinn about his father. He tells him that if he can beat him in a battle, he'll tell him more about his father and Thor's past. And through this dialogue, it's how Thorfinn finds out that his dad left the Jomsvikings to have a child, which was ultimately Thorfinn. But what is even more interesting here is that we find out that Thorkel is Thorfinn's great uncle. And at the end of this dialogue, we could say that Thorfinn won this battle and defeated Thorkel, although I wouldn't quite call it a defeat. But the prince, as I mentioned, had decided that he was going to take control here. He puts everything to a stop and commands control of the situation. He accepts that both sides, being Thorkel's and Askeladd's, are now his followers, and was going to lead them all back to the kingdom for the Imperial Council. Now once arriving at the kingdom, a few things happen. And this includes Thorfinn running into an elder from his village who thought that he was dead. But more importantly, Thorfinn then challenges Askeladd to another battle. And guess what? I'm pretty sure that you've guessed it, but he lost again. Now once this challenge was over, we find out that the king was secretly trying to assassinate his son Canute, which was no good for Askeladd, and particularly Askeladd's wider plan in order to get Canute into power. So in a last ditch attempt, Askeladd pretends to act crazy and assassinates the king whilst fighting off all the soldiers at the Imperial Council. Now why did Askeladd kill the king, you may ask? Well, the king had plans to attack his homeland, which is Wales. And we find out towards the end of the prologue that Askeladd's name was actually not his name from birth, but a name, or should I say a nickname, given to him by his mother, as his true name is Lucius Artolus Castus, named after his Wales ancestors. And so this was the reason that Askeladd did not want Wales to be destroyed. Now whilst he is fighting off all the soldiers, he ultimately lets Canute kill him, and he allowed this to happen so that the prince would be able to get all the praise and then be named the new king of England. And whilst this was the ideal result for Askeladd, this was the worst thing that could have happened to Thorfinn. The man he had dedicated his life to defeating was now killed by the prince, and Thorfinn was never going to be given the opportunity to get revenge for his father's death. And with Askeladd dying in Thorfinn's arms, we almost get to see the relationship that they had built over the years. And Askeladd tells him to move on. He tells him to go on and live his life as the real battle had yet to begin. And ultimately, this brings the anime to an end. And wow, what an anime this is. Every element of Thorfinn's journey pulled on my heartstrings. And if you haven't seen it yet, I recommend that you do go and watch it. And for those of you who have seen it, I know you're just like me and you can't wait for season 2 to come out. But that just about does it from me. But I do have one last request, and that is to make sure if you like anything I've had to say, then make sure you leave a like on the video. And if you like videos like this, then make sure you subscribe to the channel so you never miss out when I drop more content just like this. Safe.